Tell us real quick, how'd you get into the industry?
Well, that's funny because I wasn't planning on being a life insurance agent. My former career was in information technology.
Okay.
I got laid off in 2004, and you'll probably hear the out and about in my voice, but I'm originally from Canada.
Oh, wow.
So when I got laid off, I just decided to take a little bit of time off. I had an 18-month at home, and
Okay.
I was at my dentist's office, and she had asked me if I was back to work yet, and I said no. So what happened was my husband's company offered to sponsor him for a green card, and as long as I was not working, they were going to sponsor me as well. So we made the decision to take the time and get the green card. So that process was supposed to take 2 years. It ended up taking 7.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So 7 years out of the IT industry is a lifetime, right?
Yeah,
So
no kidding.
I knew that I was going to have to retool to go back into that industry. And I actually contemplated going into that industry in the sales division of things, but that was going to require almost 100% travel. And with a young family, I didn't want to do that.
Sure.
So I kind of nixed that idea pretty early on. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to go to corporate America. I knew I wanted to be my own boss, do my own thing, and be in charge of my own destiny, because I knew I had a strong work ethic. And I got tired of reorg after reorg and managers not letting you take an opportunity in another division because they didn't go. So I got tired of that because I knew, like, if it was left up to me, I could do better.
Sure.
So when I was with my dentist, she said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to make a boatload of money. I want to be able to be off when the kids are off. And I don't want to have to work 60 and 80-hour weeks. So if you know something, let me know. So we kind of laughed, and she continued to clean my teeth. And a couple of days later, she called me and she said, hey, I'll always be your hygienist, but I do insurance on the side. I think this is something that might fit what you were looking for. So I met up with her and I asked her a bunch of questions, and I looked into it. I got on some calls that Sean Mike had, and at that time they were all like calls. There was no podcast, there was no Facebook Live.
Wow.
So I was intrigued, but I wasn't ready at that time. So I kind of just had it in the back of my mind for several months. We were doing a home renovation at the time, and I was kind of the project manager for that. So it was probably a good 9 months, a year. I was that potential candidate that we hate. But then finally got that stuff behind me, and then I was like, okay, I'm ready, and then I was that new hire that we hate. But that's kind of how I got started. It was a really slow start.
So honestly, it's feel like I've heard your story a lot. So you were successful in your industry, and but the growth, there was a ceiling you weren't comfortable with. You had a lot of faith in your own ability, that you could do better, and you didn't want to take the path that kind of led out to you, because obviously sounds like your family is a really high priority in your life, and you want to make sure you're there for them. And so it's so funny. A hygienist might be the first one, though. A hygienist got me into FFL. And how long ago was this?
That was by the time I got licensed and started, it was 2015.
2015. Okay. And were they there in that same area in North Carolina?
Yep.
Okay. And so what did it look like? So it sounds like it was your first sales job ever, and probably your first also 1099. What did your first, few weeks getting into it, as far as what leads did you get, and how were you in the house? How did it look for you?
Actually, ironically, it was not my first sales. And that's probably why it appealed to me, because right out of college in Canada, I sold RESPs for 2 years. That's educational savings plans. And when I was in that industry, I always had insurance people hitting me up to come work there, and I didn't want to.
Mhm.
But at that time, like how I was calling people to sell these RESPs was getting my leads were a list of people that just had a baby. So
Okay.
like they just had a baby and I'm calling them to say, hey, you want to buy an educational savings plan? So they weren't expecting my phone call. They didn't say, I want an educational savings plan. I'm just
Yeah.
hitting them up for it.
100% cold call.
Right. So when I knew like people are actually filling out something saying I want to get insurance, I'm like, God, how easy is that?
Yeah. Oh, wow. So yeah, okay. So yeah, that changes then. So you did have some experience, but purely cold calling. So the leads was gold for you.
Oh
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
What leads did you get started on?
Okay. Well, that's the thing. And this is like, if there's new people on here just getting started and have not been around for a while, all I can say is you are blessed, because when we started, there was no leads.
Right.
Like we literally like were fighting over leads. And we're talking about like the second chance leads.
Mm.
And it was like you'd go in the CRM and there's like maybe 3 leads in one county, and you know, we're all fighting over them. So there wasn't
Yeah.
a lot of options.
Mm.
Not a lot
So
of
when you
options.
so when you got in, we were pretty much doing just mortgage or just mailers,
Yeah,
and so very, very limited.
very limited. I remember when we started doing the final expense mailers, and it was like 40, I think it was like $44 a lead.
Mhm.
And I remember they turned it up. And I remember one month it was like, gosh, they turned up and there was like so many leads. And I mean, it was great. I had lots of leads, but God, the bill was crazy.
Right.
$44 for a final expense lead. And now like
Yeah.
people are like, I'm like $11 for a lead. Holy God, you can get 4 times as many.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're popping up all the time too, overnight,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
and it's a different game now for sure. So,
You're
right, the
breaking
numbers
up
have
really
kind of gone.
bad.
Oh, am I? Let me see
Yeah.
if I can. Okay. Turn off my Wi-Fi. It says better.
Not hearing anything.
Okay. Can you
There
hear
you
me
go.
now?
Yep.
Okay. I turned my Wi-Fi off. So it says my connection is good. So hopefully
Yep.
that's a little bit better. Okay. So did you kind of hit the ground running when you
Mm.
started with us, or was it a really gradual, over time process for you?
It was, I started off crawling,
Okay.
like this is funny. Actually, let me show you something. I just moved to a new office, right? And I was looking,
Mm-hmm.
I came across like my day timer. Look at this.
Mm.
This is 2015.
Whoa.
You see that? It's like empty, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That's why I didn't sell anything.
yeah.
So 2015, I barely did anything. You know, I was transitioning from being stay-at-home mom for 11 years, and right before, like literally 2 weeks before I went to take my exam, my daughter and I got in a car accident. So we ended up doing physical therapy 4 days a week.
Wow.
And most of the leads that I could find were a couple of hours away from where I am. So trying to go to appointments and get back for physical therapy, it was a challenge. So, and I wasn't highly motivated at that point. Like I got
Sure.
into this just to make a few extra bucks, like to contribute financially. So I wasn't highly motivated. So I just, no, my schedule was not solid. I was not full-time at all. I wouldn't even consider myself part-time. So no, 2015 was barely even scratched. I couldn't even say what I made.
Okay.
Like I literally don't know what I made.
So what made you finally ramp things up? Because now obviously you've been a Hall of Fame producer for how many years?
Actually, this past year was actually my first Hall of Fame. I've been
Oh,
over
this was,
300 for several years, but this past year was my first Hall of Fame.
oh, okay, guys. So obviously, so a top producer for several years now. So what finally clicked for you? What made you decide, hey, I need to get serious about this, or, and you started just writing these big numbers that you've been writing for years in a row now. What was the change?
So honestly, it's not the best story, but in January of 2016, right before, like the week before annual convention, I was hanging out with my husband after running a full day. And we were talking about annual convention, and he wasn't sure he wanted to be married anymore.
Mm.
So I was very part-time at that time. And then all of a sudden it's like, holy crap, well, that's definitely going to change things, and I wasn't sure, obviously financially, where that would put me. But one thing I did know was I didn't want my girls to have to move from the house they grew up in. So that was it.
Wow.
I had to.
Sure. So you just had a powerful change up in life there that just, so really threw you in. Wow.
Yeah. So he said 95% of his stress was financial. Because we just looked at what my 2015 was like. I wasn't contributing.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't sure he wanted to stay married. So the only thing that I saw was, if I turned it up, either it's going to relieve his stress and we'll be okay, or I'll be able to be okay in the house with the kids, and that'll be okay. So regardless, I have to turn it up. It's the only choice I got.
Sure. So you just had this real strong just need, out of nowhere, pretty much. So you're like, I need to do something big.
Yep.
Wow, that's powerful. That's really powerful story. So what was that turn up for you, as far as what you actually did? Was it just,
You're dragging again.
oh no, I'm so sorry.
It's cool. So Chantal, I think what he's going to ask is, what was that turn off for you? Like, what did that look like? That transition from what you were doing before to what got you to Hall of Fame, to the next level, to where you didn't have to worry about finances?
Yeah. So obviously having a solid schedule, having a solid lead structure. I locked out a bunch of counties. And when I say a bunch of counties, like, I know I have some agents that come in and they say, can I lock out like 2 or 3 counties? No, I locked out like 10 counties.
Wow.
And I started working my ass off, essentially. So that's what did it that year. Like, when I look at my calendar, that January, I barely worked. So from February to the end of the year, that first year that I ran full time, that 11 months, I did 224,000 that year. So that was my first year of actually working. Okay.
And then so obviously you've been a Hall of Fame producer now, first time last year. Mm-hmm. And you're crushing it, with individual, production. What was that jump from? So 234,000, you were really putting in work. Now you were really trying, and obviously since then you've even doubled, your production. How does that look for you as a producer? Are you just is it simple as you're buying more leads, running more appointments, or have you changed up what you've done in the home over the years, or?
Well, I think anybody's going to get better over time. The more appointments you run, you get better. So you can do less appointments, once you get seasoned at it. Mm-hmm. But honestly, my situation allowed it, like in the first several years, that I was only able to run 3 days a week. Okay. So I had the off schedule. I wasn't able to run on the weekends like everybody else. So I had to make it work. I dialed Saturday for Monday, and I dialed Tuesday for Wednesday, Thursday. And that was my schedule for several years. It wasn't
Okay.
until October of 2019. It wasn't until the whole integrity, we went up to Atlanta and we knew about that whole deal, that I then made a change to kind of fit the whole mold of FFL. Things had changed. I thought it would be okay. My daughter had a license, my personal situation changed that I was going to be able to do that.
Sure.
So I then was able to run 4 days. So
Okay.
instead of 3 days, I'm now running 4 days like everybody else. So the 4 days allowed me to be able to write the 400,000.
It's so funny, to hear it from so many people. I feel like when I first got in, I'm sure a lot of the people do the same way. I hear someone that's just doing these awesome numbers as a top producer, just consistently, like you. And I think everyone has that thing in the back of their mind. Well, this person must have some secret. They must have some like little extra piece, some little extra tool, something, that helps them do it. And just time after time again on these calls and other interviews, we just hear like what you just said. You're like, well, what I did is I did more of what the classic like FFL structure is. And that's how I became a top producer. So what you were
Yeah.
doing a little bit less when you were kind of doing your own thing, which is sometimes what people have in the back of their head is like, well, that's what the people at the top do. They have their own special thing that's different from what everyone else is supposed to do, but it's not. You just went in and did the work. Well, that's awesome. Well, you're crushing it. And then I know right now, so let's go over into that. So you kind of opened it up already. The opportunity for integrity came up, what building a team can do. I know you're aggressively, building a team, just opened up an office, there in Raleigh. And what are you what does that growth look like for you? How long have you been growing?
Well, as we know, that's something that's like a constant up and down thing as well. People come, people go, you try different platforms. Some things works, some things phase out. But, it's been a couple years, I felt like I had a solid team, and then, COVID hit and like my top 3 producers all left.
Wow.
And that was like about 100,000 worth of production.
Sure.
So that was like, okay, I'm starting over. So, it's never dull. It's never dull.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Where are you at now in your personal in your team numbers?
Team numbers, don't have the final numbers out for May. I was 332 in April.
Okay.
That was a 5-week month. I'm not going to hit that in May. We're down. But we're trying to make some moves. Right now I'm having some staffing issues. I can't seem to even get anybody to come in for a job. So if anybody knows anybody looking for a job in Raleigh, I am struggling trying to get staff. So that's really on the forefront of what my focus is right now, is trying to get staff.
Sure.
But it's thrown me into doing everything myself, which, I hadn't done for 8 months. I did rely heavily on my staff that I had, which was good. But now I realize, God, how much they did.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So it forces you to kind of learn everything all over again, because things change, and there's a lot of things that had changed that I didn't even have. It's like, I have no clue how to do that.
Yeah. So where you are, you're at an interesting spot. When I've pretty much every integrity partner I've talked to, and people that are, up there, that are attaining those heights that we want to, they all say the same thing. They say that first 300,000-400,000 is the biggest grind there is, in the industry. And it's for the exact reasons that you just said. It's, when you're small, you're relying on a smaller group of people. So if anyone leaves, you really feel that, you're just building up that momentum. So you're right there. The way, what's the way Sean Mike says, he says when it's building a business in this industry is like pushing a boulder up a hill. And so you're like right at that precipice where it's like the hardest, like just a little bit more, like another 100,000, you pushed it, but you're right there. So I understand it. So God bless you, but you're doing great. I know I met several of your team down there when I visited your office, and a really great attitude and spirit. And so that's awesome. So what have you felt now building a team for a while, seeing top producers come in, seeing plenty of people come and go? What do you feel like is an essential to be successful in this industry? When you bring in a new agent and they're working with you, say, hey, you got to have this to be successful in this industry.
I mean, I think you got to have a work ethic. You got to be
Mhm.
coachable.
Mhm.
I think you got to be grateful.
Sure.
So I think those are some of the top three things. You meet people of all kinds. I just got off another call right before this one, and we got talking about like some of the red flags of like when you're talking to people, and it's like, yes, we would all like to hire these licensed agents that are ready to go, but it's
Mhm.
almost harder to untrain some of those bad habits.
Right.
So I'm not sure that I agree. I think that brand new person that's just fresh is so much easier to work with.
Sure. Well, it
Than
makes sense too,
somebody.
because everything you just said, like the top things, it's all mentality things.
Mhm.
A person being positive, a person being coachable, listening to the instruction that a top producer, is going to give them, and not trying to reinvent the wheel when they're brand new and they don't know anything. Just being a hard worker, just getting to the office, hitting the phones, going out, running enough appointments, and those are things that really you don't need a license to do. You don't need sales experience to do. You don't need to even be really talented. Really anyone can possess those qualities, but it's crazy how rare it is for someone to make that decision that is going to be me.
Right.
So I totally agree with what you're saying. It doesn't really matter if someone's coming in with a license or not. They just have to have that right mindset, to
Mhm.
be a top producer. Well, great. Well, Chantel, what's your goal for the rest of the year? So obviously you're right there, just opened up an office. Where are you hoping to be by the end of the year?
$1 million a month.
$1 million a month, board member, and
Yep.
I'm sure you'll hit it. So
I've
any
got my work cut out for me, but I'm gonna come hell or high water. I'm gonna make it.
Oh, it's very obvious just talking to you for a few minutes that you are an indomitable spirit. Like you're gonna make it happen. I have 100% faith in you. And then I want to be respectful of your time. I know you got a lot going on, but as we're wrapping up here, do you have would you have a parting shout? We're gonna have, just a handful of agents on here now, and obviously we share this and many more see it. But obviously a bunch of new agents, some in your boat, top producers and everyone in between. Do you have a parting shout that you feel like would be a blessing to anyone in this industry, just to help them be successful and get through things?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, and I think right now, I like, especially when COVID hit, it's funny because I was thinking about this while we're on this, like all these blocked out videos, like nobody's
Mm-hmm.
sharing their face, and maybe they're doing something, they're multitasking. I get that, that's fine. But this is something that's going on right now, right? There's a lot of people that are like hiding behind things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's causing things to be a little bit more closed off. And one of the things that I think is critical is for people to reach out to people, have colleagues, have running buddies. It's one
Sure.
of the things that I think helped me get to where I got was, having a good friend in the industry that like we called each other, like between every appointment, we called each other. And it was like, we talked. So like when I was learning how to do this business, I wasn't just learning from my experiences, but I was learning from hers too.
Sure.
So we would talk through like her appointment, how that went, what he said, what she said, what she did, how she overcame it, sold it, didn't sell it, what I would have done different. And we just talked through everything. And we did that every day, every time we ran, every appointment. And like it made such an impact that like I shared that years ago. And I told everybody needs a Priscilla. Like that was her name. She's not doing this anymore, but everybody needs a Priscilla. Like, and then, you know, Paige got Athena, and she's like, you're right, made a huge difference. So I think being that person that you can trust and they got to be doing well and they got to be positive. You can't be getting together and being negative Nelly. That's not going to do anybody any good. But
Sure.
if it's sharing and learning, and in a positive manner, I think it makes a huge impact on your business and how quickly you can grow. So I think that's been a game changer for me in my business and several others that I've shared that with.